Everything's going?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Not yet. Okay.
Okay, now,
Right on.
happy 2020 to everybody. Hello to Knock and Ollie and Faye. We didn't really plan on having a gap, but after we closed the meeting 2 weeks ago, we realized that it would be on a holiday for us to meet last Wednesday. So we skipped last Wednesday because everybody was already doing things during the day and had different things going on with their whatever. So I hope everybody can remember where we were from 2 weeks ago. We're reading from the Teachings for Victory, Volume 4. It's the letter to Ni'iyama. Okay, does anybody remember what this is about? What is the issue here?
About the
Actually, again, what the real basis of the bestowal of the Gohonzon, okay? What the true intent for the bestowal of the Gohonzon is based on Nichiren's own expression to someone
Yes.
in close association to him.
Yes.
Okay, so we ended on page 84, all right? But to bring where we were back into it, I'm going to start at the first paragraph where it says, simply put, on page 84. All right? And then we'll go right back into the Gosho. It says, President Ikeda continues from his intro. Simply put, Kosen Rufu means striving to realize happiness for ourselves and others, and to create a peaceful world with our own human revolution serving as the driving force. So what's that? Our own human revolution serving as the driving force. What's that actually talking about, though? Our own human revolution being spurred on by the fact that we're growing and expanding our understanding in this process of Kosen Rufu also growing and expanding. All right, he's saying, what then? Because when you achieve Buddhahood, you open the path for many others in just the fact that you have, right? Okay, so what then is the way for all of us to become happy and move forward unerringly toward the great ideal of world peace, this ideal of Kosen Rufu? Nichiren Daishonin inscribed the Gohonzon and bestowed it on us, people living in the turbulent times of the latter day of the law, as a means for bringing forth our innate Buddhahood and attaining a state of absolute happiness. Through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith in the Gohonzon, anyone can tap the immeasurable beneficial power of the mystic law within and become happy without fail. This is clear in light of Nichiren's teachings. So once again, what did he tie in there as well? Is it just about chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo? It's actually about your relationship with the Gohonzon, okay? As much as anything, it's your relationship with your Gohonzon, with the Gohonzon. Do you perceive yourself as a bodhisattva of the earth? Are you a disciple of the original teacher? Are you willing to go through the trials and tribulations that it takes to attain Buddhahood? Don't forget to do what he talks about here, as the means for bringing forth our innate Buddhahood. He's talking about trial and tribulation. He's talking about a lot of challenge, okay? That is not a simple, just a process of I need to read up and become more educated or understanding better, all right? So he's saying that we can tap the immeasurable beneficial power. So the point, though, is that, again, the immeasurable beneficial power comes from faith. Faith is what unlocks the power of the Gohonzon that exists within your life. Okay? The power isn't locked into a piece of paper. The power is in your life. Right? Okay, so President Toda, continuing on 84, while apologizing for using a simplistic analogy often described the Gohonzon with its tremendous power, a happiness manufacturing machine, he said. We can look upon the Gohonzon as a device that employs the supreme principles of Buddhism, much in the way, for instance, a light bulb is a device that is based on the principles of electricity. It's not magic, all right? As for the purpose of this Gohonzon, a device based on the highest philosophy of Buddhism, it functions as the means for helping people attain happiness. The way of practicing this supreme philosophy in Nichiren Buddhism therein lies in chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith in the Gohonzon, a practice by which all people can become happy. That's from Josei Toda, right? So President Ikeda continues, the power of the Gohonzon And this is really important to understand, because otherwise you can chant and not realize what the function and what the mechanism of all this is. The power of the Gohonzon is activated because the power of the Gohonzon already exists inside your life.
Yes.
Okay? It's already been there. It isn't something that got dropped in because you became a Nichiren Buddhist. So the power of the Gohonzon, which is your life, is activated through faith. It's your faith that brings forth that Buddhahood. All right? That is the power of our faith and practice, because he throws that in there. This isn't just about belief. You got to be doing it. All right? We through our that is through the power of our faith and practice, we can bring forth the power of the Buddha and the power of the law in our own lives and do incredible things. With faith, we awaken to our unique potential and mission and achieve a life of victory, because this process also includes the realization that you're a bodhisattva of the earth, and that the greater thing for you to be devoting your life to is not your own happiness and progress, but the progress of everyone that you can possibly touch, right? He says, here we also find the basis for realizing genuine, lasting world peace. Because if you behave that way, you're involved in a process that leads toward Kosen Rufu, right? You're not just keeping all this to yourself. It's an ever-present process of sharing. This is why Mr. Toda equated propagating the Gohonzon with spreading happiness. Now, of course, it has to be embraced. It has to be practiced correctly. You have to develop faith and all that sort of thing. But that's what he's basically saying. It's the association with the Gohonzon that allows you to bring forth your Buddhahood. This is the important point. In this chapter, let us study reply to Niiyama and learn about a life dedicated to Kosen Rufu based on faith in the Gohonzon. So now that's where we left off 2 weeks ago. Continuing, he says, an offering from a follower in Awa. This is from the Gosho. I have received the bag of sea laver that you sent. I would also like to express my appreciation for the offering of sea laver from Oama. Okay? And then there's a space because we read the whole Gosho 2 weeks ago. This is going to go into specific sections of the Gosho. Though I have long since ceased to think about my home, seeing this laver brings back many familiar memories. I am saddened and find it hard to bear. It is the same kind of laver I saw long ago on the shore at Kataomi, Ichikawa, and Kominato. I feel an unwarranted resentment that, while the color, shape, and taste of this laver have remained unchanged, my parents have passed away, and I cannot restrain my tears. In February 1275, while residing on Mount Manobu, Nichiren Daishonin received a gift of sea laver, or dried seaweed, as an offering from Niiyama, who lived in the Daishonin's home province of Awa. Having been harvested from the cold waters of early spring, no doubt it was still fragrant with the smell of the sea from which it came. Accompanying Niiyama's letter and offerings was a gift of seaweed from another follower, Oama. Their names, Niiyama, younger nun, and Oama, elder nun, suggest that the two women were perhaps daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. Others also speculate that Niiyama may have been Oama's daughter or granddaughter-in-law. So we're not really sure what the real relationship was. The point is that they were related. Nichiren uses slightly more formal language while referring to Oama. Also, since later he refers to Lords of Manners, Oama may have been the same person he addresses in other writings as the wife of the Lord of the Manor. And he gives a reference to a Gosho from Volume 2 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. When we combine this wish with other references, such as, I, Nichiren, am greatly indebted to her, Oama, and she, the wife of the Lord of the Manor, treated my parents with kindness, Oama can possibly be identified as the owner of an estate in Nagasa district, Awa province, who somehow assisted Nichiren's parents at one time. Continuing second column, page 85, Nichiren recalls fond memories from his birthplace. Nichiren had taken up residence on Mount Minobu some 9 months earlier, in May 1274. No other extant letter from Minobu prior to this one contains such a detailed description of his life there. But in this letter to Niiyama, a follower from his birthplace of Awa, he relates what life is like in the mountain recesses, so different from the seaside where he grew up. Remember when we read the Gosha, we was talking about the 4 big mountains and all, the whole terrain of where he is up in Minobu. And this will go back to the Gosho and requote it. The Fuji River is the swiftest in all Japan. The waters, this is the Daishonin from the Gosho as it read the whole Gosho. The Fuji River is the swiftest in all Japan. The waters of the river rush through the valley like an arrow shot through a tube by a powerful archer. To the east stands the peak of Tenshi. To the south, Takatori. To the west, Shichimin. And to the north, Minobu. It is as though 4 towering folding screens had been set up. The howls of wolves fill the mountains. The chatter of monkeys echoes through the valleys. Stags call plaintively to their does, and the cries of cicadas sound shrilly. Occasionally, you see a woodcutter gathering firewood, and those who visit from time to time are friends of old. Climbing the peak, it looks as if seaweed were growing there, but instead you find an expanse of ferns. Going down to the valley, you think surely it must be laver growing there, but it is only a dense growth of parsley. The gift of dried seaweed stirred fond memories of his birthplace, Awa. Nichiren had returned home to Awa in the fall of 1264 to care for his ailing mother and pray for the prolongation of her life. He had remained there for an extended period and conducted vigorous propagation activities before returning to Kamakura in 1268. Having been subjected to harsh persecution in the intervening years, however, he had been able to return home since then. And everybody does remember that when he went home to try and help his mom out, he extended her life. She was going to die. She lived for another 4 years. Here he writes that though the dried seaweed of Awa tastes the same as it always did, his parents have now left the world, and he cannot stop his tears. From these words, it is clear how much Nichiren loved his parents and his birthplace. Surely the feelings Nichiren expresses here for the place where he grew up cannot fail to touch the hearts of all who read them. My own family, President Ikeda is saying, as many of you may know, also harvested and processed seaweed in the waters off of Omori in Tokyo's Ota ward. Just like the Daishonin, the smell of dried seaweed reminds me of my parents and my birthplace. Incidentally, Nichiren's writings are regarded as a valuable reference source by scholars studying the history of seaweed cultivation in Japan, interestingly enough. Second column, page 86, continuing with the Gosho. A great mandala unknown in previous ages. And this is when the Daishonin starts explaining to Niiyama why he has reservations about giving a Gohonzon to Oama. He says, but enough of this, as he's been talking about, where he is and how hard it is to live there. He says, but enough of this. I have been asked to inscribe a Gohonzon for Oama, and I am troubled about it. The reason is as follows. This Gohonzon was never mentioned in the writings of many Tripitaka masters who traveled from India to China, or in those of priests who journeyed from China to India. It is not known, and then that's the end of that part of the Gosho. President Ikeda continues. It is not known when Niiyama embraced faith in the mystic law, but we do know that she maintained pure-hearted faith, sending the Nichiren offerings both during his exile on Sato as well as after he moved to Mount Minobu. We can surmise that Nichiren had either already presented Niiyama with a Gohonzon or sent her one along with this letter. It also appears that Niiyama's most recent letter may have contained a request from Oama, asking Nichiren to inscribe a Gohonzon for her as well. He says he is troubled by this request, and in fact he later states conclusively that he cannot inscribe one for her. Nichiren outlines his reasons for this by clarifying the profound significance of the Gohonzon. Okay? And this is the point in the Gosho where you should be paying attention, because when he says his profound significance, his profound significance of the Gohonzon is ours. Okay? So he says, Nichiren outlines his reasons for this by clarifying the profound significance of the Gohonzon, which is what you're supposed to get from reading this Gosho. First, he says that the Gohonzon that he revealed is an object of devotion that has never been seen or heard of in the long history of Buddhism. So he qualifies, this has never, I'm not replicating anything that's ever existed before. Okay? He says, neither in its transmission from India to China, nor from China to Japan. As evidence, he notes that while there are records of the origins of the objects of devotions enshrined in the temples of every country where Buddhism existed at that time, nothing at all had been recorded about the Gohonzon. In other words, it is an object of devotion not seen in the former or middle days of the law, as he indicates when he says this great mandala has never yet been propagated anywhere in Japadvipa, the entire world, in more than 2,200 years since the Buddha's passing. Right? He says he then goes on to say, however, that the Buddhist sutras themselves, in fact, offer documentary proof corroborating the validity of the Gohonzon he has revealed and when it would be revealed. Okay? He states that the Gohonzon had not been manifested in concrete form until now because people lacked the capacity to understand it, and the time was not yet right. But we also understand that distinction to be? The disciples that encountered the Lotus Sutra in the former and the middle day of the law were disciples of Shakyamuni. The Bodhisattvas of the earth are disciples of the original teacher, the original state. You get it? Okay, that's the distinction. He said that the time was not right yet. Why was the time not yet right? Because we hadn't reached the Mappo. Okay, we hadn't hit that 500-year period. The true transmission of the law for the latter day had not been expressed yet. Do you understand? Okay, so he says, as evidence of this, he next states that among all of Shakyamuni's lifetime teachings, the Gohonzon is expounded in the lifespan, the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, and it was entrusted to Bodhisattva superior practice as the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth and the supernatural powers, 21st chapter, for the sake of these those living in the evil age after the Buddha's passing. Continuing on page 87. Everybody's with me, right? Okay. Shakyamuni's true intent is revealed in the Lotus Sutra's ceremony in the air. Okay? Now, why can Daisaku Ikeda title it like that?
To show the legitimacy of the
Shakyamuni's true intent is revealed in the Lotus Sutra ceremony in the air. Okay? What is the Gohonzon?
It was announced.
No. What is the Gohonzon? It's the Daishonin's depiction of the ceremony in the air as it was related in the 16th chapter. When he says over here, it first appears in the 16th chapter and then it's given, it's superior practices that put in charge of it in the 21st or 23rd, whichever it was. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so he's saying, he then goes on to say that the Buddhist sutras themselves, in fact, offer documentary proof corroborating the validity of the Gohonzon he has revealed. He states that the Gohonzon has not been manifested in concrete form until now because people lack the capacity to understand it and the time was not yet right. As evidence for this, he next states that among all of Shakyamuni's lifetime's teachings, the Gohonzon is expounded in the 16th chapter. That's why this true intent issue and the ceremony in the air from this title of the next thing. You understand? What the true intent is that this is for the former and the middle day, and it's not the actual solution for the latter day. Okay? And that Shakyamuni is actually a disciple of the original teacher. Understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Shakyamuni, continuing that. Shakyamuni's true intent was to make way for the Daishonin's teaching of the Buddhism of sowing. That's why it took him his whole life to get to the ceremony in the air in the 16th chapter of Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? He's been teaching for 50 years already. Shakyamuni's true intent is revealed in the Lotus Sutra's ceremony in the air. From the Gosho, Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, treasured this Gohonzon in his heart for numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. And even after he appeared in this world, he did not expound it until more than 40 years after his first preaching. Even in the Lotus Sutra, he did not allude to it in the earlier chapters of the theoretical teaching, the first 14. He began things in the Treasure Tower chapter. He revealed it in the life. So he started things, he began things in the Treasure Tower, the 15th chapter, and he revealed it in the 16th chapter. The lifespan, right? And he brought things to a close in the supernatural powers and entrustment chapters. To a close. Now, does the Lotus Sutra end with the supernatural and entrustment powers chapters? No, it goes on for another 4 or 5 chapters past that. So, when he says brings things to a close, he's talking about the latter day of the law. There's nothing in those last chapters that have really anything to do with us now, because we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, right? We're not looking at a 16 chapter Lotus Sutra. You with me?
Right. Yeah.
All right. So the Buddha declared, "My true disciples I have kept hidden." So the Buddha declared, "My true disciples." So how has Shakyamuni qualified these guys that have come from the earth in the 16th chapter of the Soma? Where did the ceremony... Why is the ceremony of the air significant? Because that's when the bodhisattvas of the earth appear.
Right.
Yes.
Okay? They don't appear until then. All right? So he says, and remember, Manjushri is going like, where the hell did all these guys come from? I've been with you from day one. I don't recognize anybody. Right? That's when Shakyamuni then says, my true disciples, making that distinction, I have kept hidden in the depths of the earth for numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. Are any of those disciples just bodhisattvas? No, all those bodhisattvas of the earth are all Buddhas,
Right.
who appear as bodhisattvas in order to lead others to the Buddhahood that they already have existed, have brought forth. That's why they're disciples of the original teacher. Shakyamuni is not qualified to teach this teaching to the bodhisattvas of the earth. Do you understand? Only superior practices. All right? The Buddha declared, my true disciples I have kept hidden in the depths of the earth for numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. I will entrust it to them. So saying, the Buddha summoned bodhisattva superior practices and the other bodhisattvas in the emerging from the earth chapter and entrusted them with the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo, the heart of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. And did he say why? Yeah, he said why. He says, because these are my original disciples, and they're the only ones that can handle how hard this is going to be to do. You guys couldn't hang. Okay? You with me?
Yes.
That means you guys are all pretty capable. Though Nichiren is not Bodhisattva superior practices, believing that his already having attained a general understanding of this teaching is perhaps the design of that Buddha. He has been declaring it from these more than 20 years. So that was from the Gosho again. The Daishonin is not saying, and now let me introduce myself. I am the superior practices. He is not saying, I am the Son of God. He's not doing anything like others have done. He's saying, I can't speak for specifically superior practices, but since it was already supposed to go in that direction, I'm already there. And regardless of whether superior practices has appeared or not, I've already begun what he's going to do. And so in stating that, he's actually saying, I am. Okay? Continuing. Page 88. Here, Nichiren states that the Gohonzon that he has revealed is the same Gohonzon that Shakyamuni has treasured in his heart since his original attainment of enlightenment in the inconceivably remote past. In addition, he says this Gohonzon is expounded in the form of the ceremony in the air that occurs in the Lotus Sutra. Let us take a moment to review the significance of the ceremony in the air. In the Treasure Tower, the 11th chapter, a giant tower adorned with many treasures suddenly arises into the air, and it's bigger than a third of the earth. Shakyamuni calls forth all the Buddhas who are his emanations from throughout the 10 directions in 3 existences, past, present, and future, and takes his seat alongside many treasures Buddha, who has come there to say what Shakyamuni is saying is true, who resides in this tower that has appeared. He then lifts the entire assembly at Eagle Peak into the air as well. Everybody's lifted up into the air, and the ceremony in the air begins. It also lasts for an incalculable amount of time, and of course, it seemed like it was only half a day. All right, remember all that, right? Shakyamuni asks if there are any disciples who will take on the challenge of broadly preaching the Lotus Sutra in the Sahe world after his passing. Who are the disciples who will carry out this wish? The Buddha says he will entrust the mystic law, which is the very essence of the eternally enduring life of the Buddha, the original state, to the disciples who have made a firm vow to undertake this effort. This is the main theme of the ceremony in the air. This great ceremony of entrustment from teacher to disciples begins with the Treasure Tower chapter as an introduction to the subsequent lifespan chapter, in which Shakyamuni discloses to the assembly his original enlightenment, which had never been revealed in any of the sutras prior to this point, and his immeasurable lifespan, which also had never been revealed before in any of the sutras that he had preached prior to this point. Then in the supernatural powers and entrustment chapters, he entrusts the law without qualifying what it is, just saying it's the original law of all things, to which he had awakened and upheld since his enlightenment in the remote past. And he's revealed it now not just being a Sanzen Jintingo, but Goyaku Jintingo, right? A numberless major world system, dust particle corpus. So he reveals that to whom? To his disciples from that distant time, who are his true successors, the bodhisattvas of the earth. With this, the ceremony in the air comes to an end. It is just as the Daishonin writes in this letter. He began things in the Treasure Tower chapter. He revealed it in the Lifespan chapter, and he brought things to a close in the Supernatural Powers and Entrustment chapters. These sutra passages substantiate that the Gohonzon revealed by Nichiren Daishonin is based on the correct teaching of Buddhism that was transferred from Shakyamuni to the bodhisattvas of the earth for propagation in Mappo, the latter day of the law, and they all split. And everybody went back down to earth. The ceremony in the air was over. Nothing more for bodhisattvas of the earth to talk about. Get it? All right. So they've all gone for those last chapters. Yeah. They don't need to know that stuff. It's all expedient means. Trusting the 5 characters of Myoho Rengekyo, the Bodhisattva superior practices, at the bottom of page 88. The most important fact to bear in mind when it comes to propagating the Lotus Sutra in the age after Shakyamuni's passing, that would include now, is that it will be an evil age defiled by the 5 impurities. Okay? Were it not, we couldn't do all the magic shit we do. There'd be no reason to do it. Okay? All right. Those who propagate the correct teaching of Buddhism at this time are certain to be assailed by harsh persecution. I qualify. In this letter, Nichiren Daishonin states that although such eminent bodhisattvas as Manjushri, Maitreya, Perceiver of the World Sounds, and Medicine King implored Shakyamuni to entrust them with this mission, he refused to do so. Nichiren explains the reason behind Shakyamuni's refusal as follows. Since they have only recently begun to hear the Lotus Sutra, their understanding is still limited. Thus, they would not be able to endure the great difficulties of the latter age. Because what the Daishonin is saying is, my life is going to validate to you the kind of stuff you're going to go through in the process of expressing your Buddhahood to others for the sake of them expressing it themselves. That's the level of compassion you have. You're not going to walk around like a king, okay? You're going to look like a common mortal but be a Buddha, and it's going to be a tough road to hoe. Who then can endure the trials in the middle of first column, page 89. Who then can endure the trials of the latter day of the law and widely propagate the correct teaching as Shakyamuni's genuine successors? Nichiren cites the Buddha as stating, my true disciples I have kept hidden in the depths of the earth for numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. These disciples refer to the bodhisattvas of the earth led by bodhisattva superior practices, whom Shakyamuni has called forth. Pardon me. They are disciples that he knows he can rely on totally to fulfill this important mission. As indicated by the statement, ever since the long distant past, I have been teaching and converting this multitude. Pardon me. I have to take a quick drink here. Shakyamuni has been teaching and fostering these bodhisattvas of the earth from the distant past. They are his original disciples and thus have the most profound ties with him. More than anyone else, they share his vision of propagating the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law and have received intensive instruction and training from him. Describing the bodhisattvas of the earth, Nichiren writes, these bodhisattvas are the ones who had thoroughly forged their resolve. And we talked about the significance of the word forged, right? This indicates that to stand up and shoulder responsibility for Kosen Rufu in this most challenging time of the latter day of the law, one must possess a thoroughly forged resolve to do so. And what is a thoroughly forged resolve? Do not begrudge your life and never give up to the last moment of your life. That's a thoroughly forged resolve, one that in no circumstance can sway you from having confidence and belief in, and nothing can stop you from pursuing to the last moment of your life. All right? This is something Nichiren also, because that's faith.
Yes.
That's the faith that makes you a Buddha and gives you Buddha powers. And I didn't mean to kill you, little bug, but sorry. All right? You with me?
Yes.
All right. That's faith. This is something Nichiren also explains in The Object of Devotion for Observing the Mind. He writes, Shakyamuni Buddha summoned the multitude of great bodhisattvas from beneath the earth. He entrusted them with the 5 characters of Myoho Rengekyo, the Heart of the Lifespan chapter, for the enlightenment of all beings in the land of Jambudvipa, the entire world. All living things share in that Kosen Rufu. Okay? Yeah. The bugs. Hope he finds his way. Okay. The mystic law is the great teaching upheld by the Buddha who attained enlightenment in the infinitely remote past. Infinitely means without beginning. Okay, so numberless major world system dust particle kalpas is a point, right? That's why we talk about Kuan. When we talk about infinitely remote past, we're talking about Kuan Ganjo, right? This law reveals the mutual possession of the 10 worlds and therefore opens the way for all people to attain Buddhahood, because it reveals the fact that you already have the potential to be the Buddha, and in fact already are, but just have not revealed or expressed it. And it is the original disciples from that time, bound to their teacher. We already discussed, we all have teachers. All of us are teachers. Okay? Bound to their teacher by eternal ties across the three existences of past, present, and future, who in the Buddha's stead take on the noble mission of propagating the Gohonzon, which is the embodiment of the mystic law in the evil latter age. All makes sense, right? Going on to page 90. Going out among the people in the evil age. What are the hallmarks of the beginning of the latter day of the law? Nichiren describes it as a time when misguided priests who slander the correct teaching of Buddhism fill the land with when natural calamities and disasters such as drought, epidemics, famine, and war break out, and when the people are racked by misery.
It's just described what is
Right now. Right now. Okay? So if you wonder why the hell the world's going to hell, it's setting it up for us to do our thing. All right? At such a time as in this moment, right now, because we watch the news, everything I just said is going on right now. At such a time, the bodhisattvas of the earth, us, throw themselves into the midst of the suffering people. That's the only reason we're here, because of our compassion. We've already got the fortune to avoid all this.
Right.
We're doing this voluntarily. This is what we do. We get off on it. At such a time, the bodhisattvas of the earth throw themselves in the midst of the suffering people and engage in a momentous struggle to realize peace and happiness for all. He's talking about what the Soka Gakkai is attempting to accomplish in the whole world right now. And the Gohonzon is the banner of the propagation of the Lotus Sutra, which is the shared vow of teacher and disciple. Because it's Kosen Rufu all wrapped up into one thing. Okay? In this letter, Nichiren writes, it's the original state. That's what Kosen Rufu is. That's what we're trying to achieve, to bring everything back into that equilibrium of mutual respect and clarity. To not think, something's less than something else. Where am I? I just lost my ruler.
In this letter.
Okay, in this letter, Nichiren writes that it is the Buddha's wish for all people to embrace and believe in this great mandala of the 5 characters. In other words, it is a call for us to uphold faith in the Gohonzon without ever forsaking it. Those are very key words. Without ever forsaking it. Even when it seems like I've been chanting a lot and nothing's changing. Going on 50 years later, you're going to run you're going to run into that. That's part of the deal. Yeah, you got to keep chanting even when it seems like things aren't changing. Because they will. That's how you have those benefits that last forever and ever and ever, and you can speak with the kind of conviction that you can when you've had those kinds of benefits.
Right.
All right? But you don't get those kinds of benefits without that kind of faith that doesn't forsake it, period. All right? From the viewpoint of the correct teaching of Buddhism, what is the best way to help guide to enlightenment people who live in an age of conflict, seemingly filled with inescapable suffering? What is the best way to eliminate misery and misfortune from the world? Mm-hmm. The only solution is to help those living in such an age become strong and wise. They're the only ones that can fix their life.
Right.
What you perceive is you. Okay? Right? So actually, all of this suffering, this is all reflecting the karma of the individual. It's not just the world such a bad place and innocent people got stuck in the midst of something they don't deserve. This is talking about the only solution is for them to develop a powerful life force, okay, to become strong and wise, and to perceive the true nature of their own life. God isn't going to do it for them. Nothing outside of them is going to do it for them. That's what he's talking about. The only solution is to empower the human being to be at their highest state, which puts them in a position to accommodate all of this conflict and make it change. The only solution is to help those living in such an age become strong and wise, to awaken them to the powerful life force of Buddhahood within them, which can provide them with the strength to bounce back from every form of hardship. And how do we do that?
By chanting.
By doing it ourselves first. By living as examples, just as Nichiren did. Just as all the teachers. That's what a teacher is. All right? Not somebody free of any problems. Somebody that defeats them every time they occur. Because you can't teach people how not to have problems. But you can teach them how to overcome them. Yeah. All right? To be able to immediately manifest this fundamental life force, our innate Buddha nature, we need the Gohonzon. That's what I'm talking about, this relation, not just realization. All right? In this letter, we are assured that when we have faith in and practice based on the Gohonzon, we will gain the great benefit of enjoying peace and security in our present existence and good circumstances in the next. Nichiren highlights here that the Gohonzon exists for the happiness of the people living in the evil age of the latter day of the law. Nichiren revealed the Gohonzon after having undergone persecutions and triumphing in his struggles against the three powerful enemies. And that's what I'm talking about. Hitting the shit and kicking its ass. That's what this is all about. Okay? This isn't about suffering through it. This is about being a mentor by being victorious. So you show those people that are suffering, you don't have to. You have the power to do this. Nichiren revealed, again, I got to say it again. Nichiren revealed the Gohonzon after having undergone persecution and triumphing in his struggles against the three powerful enemies. These enemies arose to obstruct his efforts, just as that's the only reason they arise in your life. To obstruct your efforts to propagate the great law for the enlightenment of all people in the latter day, because you're bodhisattvas of the earth. There's no separation between you and Nichiren Daishonin. Zero. Right? The fact that he could surmount all obstacles and widely propagate the Lotus Sutra proves that he was the embodiment of Bodhisattva superior practices, committed to the mission of propagating the correct teachings of Buddhism in the latter day of the law. And that's what we're doing right now. All right? Continuing on page 92nd column. Nichiren's example of resolute faith. Resolute faith. What is resolute faith? Immovable. It's not based on what's happening. It's based on who I am. Out of all the places in the entire, going back to the Gosha, out of all the places in the entire land of Jampavipa, the entire world, Nichiren began to propagate this correct teaching in Tojo district in Awa province in Japan. Accordingly, the Tojo steward became my enemy, but his clan has now been half destroyed. That was Taganobu, by the way. Because Oama is insincere and foolish. Sometimes she believes, but other times she doubts. She is irresolute. When Nichiren incurred the wrath of the government authorities, she discarded the Lotus Sutra. This is what I meant before when I told her, whenever we met, that the Lotus Sutra is the most difficult to believe and the most difficult to understand. And it's your faith that's going to unlock whether or not you reveal it in your life. Okay? Earlier in this letter, going back to the lecture, President Ikeda said, earlier in this letter, Nichiren Daishonin writes, though it is a remote place, Tojo village in Awa province is like the center of Japan. It was from this small village, out of all the places in the entire world, that his great struggle to propagate the correct teaching of Buddhism began. The Lotus Sutra warns, since hatred and jealousy toward this sutra abound even when the thus come one is in the Shakyamuni Buddha is in the world, how much more will this be so after his passing? The steward of Awa village, Tojo Kagenobu, was hostile to Nichiren and persecuted him. He became enraged when Nichiren first publicly declared his teachings at Seijoji Temple, and he was behind the attack on him in the Komatsubara persecution of 1264. Tojo Kagenobu also acted as a lawless, Tojo Kagenobu also acted in a lawless, high-handed manner concerning the estates of Oama, attempting to confiscate 2 temples on her lands and place them under his own control, because he's a big Nimbutsu guy, right? Nichiren came to Oama's aid in this case and foiled Kagenobu's plans, as he records in another of his writings. And you're going to see that point 18 right there, right? And if you go back and look at what is point 18, it's going to go to the Gosho letter to the priests of Seichoji or something like that. And he's going to recount all that. And that's why 2 weeks ago when I talked about Bodhisattva Space Treasury, and I made the distinction of the Buddhas, okay, in that one he talks about, he made this prayer and he tied it to Bodhisattva Space Treasury's hand, that Oama's temples not be able to be taken. And he even made a declaration in that letter that he tied to Space Treasury's hand, that if Kagenobu was able to get those temples, he was going to renounce his faith. He was like really strict. And so, of course, Kagenobu was not able to, and the Daishonin attributed that to actually his prayer being answered. Okay, so that's why I had mentioned last week that whole thing about the differences between the objects of devotion, and don't confuse just big fat guys that are all happy and stuff. They're not Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni's always skinny, and he's always got his hands down, and he's in a seated lotus position. All right? Where's 18? Where was I? 18, okay. It is said that Kagenobu died suddenly, not long after the Komatsubara persecution. Okay? Cause and effect. The harassment of the Daishonin and his followers in Awa continued, but as Nichiren records here, the workings of cause and effect in the realm of Buddhism were inexorable, and the number of opposing forces declined considerably. For practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, encountering persecution in the course of propagating the law is the highest honor and a sign that they are on the right path. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that is the teaching. Okay, so let's say it again, because I got a star there. For practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, would that include all of us? Mm-hmm. Yes. Encountering persecution in the course of propagating the law, expressing it as in the best manner that you can for the sake of people utilizing it in their own life. If people go back on you on that, it's the highest honor and a sign that you're on the right path, according to Nichiren, because that's sure what happened to him. So if it happens to you, it's not like you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. You're encountering the exact same thing that Daisaku Ikeda has, Josei Toda did, Makaguchi did, everybody that stood up correctly has, including the Daishonin. And the Daishonin warned at the very beginning, anybody that does what I'm saying to do is going to have to go through what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, he says, is a sign that they are on the right path. Oama, however, does not seem to have grasped the essential reality of practicing the mystic law, as many people don't. Mm-hmm. They think, well, you should be protected. You should never have a problem. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. But if you have no problems, if you're always protected, when can you show the power of being the Buddha? You cannot. No. It's a personality thing. Right. That's not Buddhahood. All right, Buddhahood is power, it's not personality. Nichiren says that Oama is insincere and foolish because she allowed herself to be swayed by appearances and public opinion. He had already been in touch with her, okay, and was unable to recognize the truth. When things were going smoothly, she seemed to have faith in the Lotus Sutra. Mm-hmm. But as soon as any difficulty emerged, she became filled with doubt. Right. All right? Very common. Yes. All right? Yes. For instance, when she saw Nichiren, that's why we have 6 stages of practice, right? Yes. We have to get past that point where difficulty discourages us. All right? For instance, when she saw Nichiren incur the wrath of the authorities during the Tatsunokuchi persecution and Sato exile, Oama abandoned her faith, as 999 out of 1,000 did. This despite Nichiren's repeated warnings to her in person that the Lotus Sutra is the most difficult to believe and the most difficult to understand, and that without strong faith it would be difficult to continue practicing in the face of persecution. Considering his history, Nichiren was concerned about the integrity of Oama's faith because he didn't want her to slander. This is really nothing more about, I'm not sure if she's up to what could happen if it goes south. You know, he's trying to protect her. He's not trying to hold something out here like you're not good enough or you didn't do enough or you had doubts so you don't qualify. No, that's not it. He's worried that somehow, he's even saying to Niiyama, I've given you a Gohonzon, but still I'm not sure if you're going to deal with it. It's like facing a sword pointed at my head. He says it somewhere in the Gosha, right? So, considering this history, Nichiren was concerned about the integrity of Oama's faith. If he were to inscribe the Gohonzon for her, a person who lacked faith, simply out of gratitude or a sense of indebtedness or obligation, he would be compromising the right principles of Buddhism and become a priest who was guilty of partiality. He's not really basing it on Buddhism, he's basing it on secular kind of things, okay? No longer guided by the law, but by his own arbitrary whims. Okay? And the law's already been pretty clearly defined here. Nichiren didn't just start making up a bunch of shit, right? I mean, this stuff all follows in line with the teachings of the Lotus Sutra as it relates to substance. Do you understand? Right? Okay, it says, on the other hand, if he refused to grant her the Gohonzon, Oama might bear a grudge against him because she failed to understand the true spirit of faith in the mystic law. With this keen understanding of her character, he seems to have taken the trouble of writing a letter to a priest disciple named Acharya Suke, detailing his reasons for turning down Oama's request, with the aim of having the latter explain the situation to her on his behalf. The importance, the importance of steadfast faith. Continuing to going back to the Gosho. You, Niyama, are of the same family as Oama, but have demonstrated the sincerity of your faith. Because you have sent offerings to me, both to the province of Sato and to this province, and because your resolve does not seem to wane, I will give you the Gohonzon. But here it is. But I still worry whether you will maintain your faith to the end and feel as if I were treading on thin ice or facing a drawn sword. That's how much I will be guilty if I bestow a Gohonzon upon you and you slander. Because I shouldn't have given you one. If I give you one when I shouldn't have given you one, whatever you do is going to be on me as well. All right? So he says, where am I? Okay, so yeah. Okay. Though Niyama is of the continuing President Kata, bottom of page 92, first column. Though Niyama is of the same family as Oama and engages in many daily activities with her, she is quite different from Oama in her faith. It is the heart that is important, the Daishonin writes. Our attributes and mental states are indeed subtle, and sometimes the smallest difference can lead to a huge divergence in the directions of the direction our lives take. It is the heart that is important, Nichiren writes. President Kata is quoting Nichiren. He says, President Kata says, our attitudes and mental states are indeed subtle, and sometimes the smallest difference can lead to a huge divergence in the directions our lives take. We either sustain faith or we don't. Okay? That can happen. That's part of the challenge. 8 wins, baby. There's prosperity as well as decline. All right? Even when addressing members of the same family, the Daishonin always tailored his advice to fit the unique circumstances and emotional state of each individual, always being mindful of how we can help each person establish strong faith in the Gohonzon is the essence of the humanistic teaching of Nichiren Daishonin. What was so different about the two women's faith that the Daishonin decided to inscribe the Gohonzon for Niiyama but not for Oama? First, we must remember that this is the Gohonzon for the widespread propagation of the law in the latter day. In this letter, the Daishonin recounts how for more than 20 years he has undertaken this mission of propagating the mystic law while enduring unremitting hardship and persecution. This, I believe, is very significant, President Ikeda says. In other words, the wish of all Buddhas is the widespread propagation of the law in the latter age after the Buddha's passing. But this evil age will not be transformed into that unless there are courageous practitioners who embrace and believe in this great mandala of the 5 characters as Nichiren did. That is the Gohonzon of the mystic law, and actively strive to realize this goal as Nichiren did. Same mind as Nichiren, right? Nichiren revealed that he was fulfilling the role of superior practice, the Bodhisattva's superior practices, by taking the lead in this struggle. Through his Bodhisattva practice to realize happiness for all people, he demonstrated that an ordinary person can manifest the eternal and supremely noble life state of Buddhahood that encompasses the entire universe, the original state. And he inscribed his own infinitely vast and eternal life state in the form of a mandala, the Gohonzon. By embracing and believing in this Gohonzon, we too can unlock and manifest this boundless state of life within us. Kosen Rufu is the effort to share the mystic law with one person after another and increase the number of people who practice Nichiren's teachings to realize their fullest inner potential. The Gohonzon exists to make this possible. Indeed, the Gohonzon exists for the happiness of humanity and the realization of Kosen Rufu, not just the fulfillment of all our little wishes for what we want to have happen. Page 93, first column, we're finishing up. The struggle, the shared struggle of mentor and disciple. And this is an important thing to remember here because, again, don't forget, is Nichiren a bodhisattva of the earth? Yes. We're all bodhisattvas of the earth. The original mentor and us as the disciples, where there's no separation. So this is a shared struggle. This is the same struggle. Not one gave rise to the other. One revealed the reality of the other. Okay? Didn't give rise to it, revealed its existence. Therefore, okay, so the shared struggle of mentor and disciple. Therefore, when we embrace faith in the Gohonzon, it is important that we firmly believe in the justice of Nichiren's struggle. Unless we have the resolve to share in this struggle in the same manner that he did, that's what he's talking about. That's like doubt-free faith, no matter what. That's what he's talking about. Therefore, when we embrace faith in the Gohonzon, it is important that we firmly believe in the justice of Nichiren's struggle, this struggle to reveal Buddhahood, the justice of it, the fact that it's not unjust that we have to struggle to do this, okay, that it's difficult. Unless we have the resolve to share in this struggle, to share in it, to do it ourselves as well, and participate in widely propagating the mystic law, then the supremely noble life state of Buddhahood will not manifest powerfully within us. We're not of the same mind as Nichiren, okay? The essence of faith in Nichiren Buddhism is for the disciples to strive for Kosen Rufu with the same spirit as their mentor. There should be no separation between you and Nichiren. Nichiren sensed that Niiyama shared his state Nichiren sensed that Niiyama shared his commitment to strive unflaggingly for the sake of Kosen Rufu. Hence, he indicates in this letter that she has remained steadfast in faith throughout the Tatsunakuchi persecution and the Sato exile, and until the present time of his residence on Mount Minobu. He also notes that Niiyama had often sent offerings to him, affirming the consistency of her faith, her sincere seeking spirit toward his teachings, and ongoing material support for him. Perhaps put another way, we could say that Niiyama was not only inspired by, but also filled with a deep sense of appreciation for the Daishonin and his valiant efforts for the happiness of others in spite of numerous persecutions, and that this fueled her resolve to support his efforts. When we stand up with such faith, we manifest in our lives the Gohonzon, which Nichiren says exists only within the mortal flesh of us ordinary people. In reality, the real Gohonzon only exists in our lives. It is our life. Increasing the ranks of those who share in this struggle with the Nichiren, the original mentor. That is, awakening growing numbers of bodhisattvas of the earth is the way to make Kosen Rufu a reality in the latter day of the law. Today, faith based on the shared struggle of mentor and disciple is found in the SGI, the organization in complete accord with the Buddha's intent and decree. The Gohonzon exists for the widespread propagation of the mystic law. Through faith, we can bring forth without limit, the absolute beneficial power of the Gohonzon or Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We can bring forth the power to be able to savor at all times a state of absolute happiness. That is why it is so important for us to not quit our Buddhist practice. Indigo. Because of this wish, what Niiyama would be able to strive with, because of this wish that Niiyama would be able to strive with strong faith for Kosen Rufu all her life, the Daishonin frankly voices his reservations, hoping his words will rouse her to strengthen her faith. But I still worry whether you will maintain your faith to the end, and I feel as if I were treading on thin ice or facing a drawn sword. He wanted all of his disciples to remain true to their faith to the very end and come to enjoy genuine happiness and ease, like Shijo Kingo. He also expressed this wish at the end of this letter. He notes that as the crackdown on his disciples continued after the Tatsunakuchi persecution, 999 out of 1,000 people gave up their faith, but now that the storm of persecution is past, some of them regret doing so. With profound compassion and concern, he urges Niiyama never to forsake the path of faith. Though others change, I alter not. Today, this spirit of striving and faith based on the shared struggle of mentor and disciple directly connected to Nichiren Daishonin exists only within the SGI. Our first and second Soka Gakkai presidents, Tsunesaburo Makaguchi and Josei Toda, both taught this spirit of faith, and it has also been the heart of my own tireless efforts. Since embracing faith in the Daishonin's teachings, I have always been thoroughly prepared to dedicate my life to Kosen Rufu together with my mentor. When Mr. Toda's business was in serious trouble, many of his followers were shaken, and they let him down by deserting him at a crucial moment because they thought he shouldn't have any problems. But I cherished the firm belief. No, that's exactly how it went down. Yeah, you got problems, man. Guess what? Your prayers aren't being answered. Huh? Maybe, right? But that's why President Kate is constantly emphasizing this. Be prepared. Don't be freaked out, and don't be discouraged.
Right.
Don't be afraid. Don't be defeated. Faith, victory of gold. As long as you don't be afraid and you don't allow yourself to be defeated, which means you're not going to give up, you get that victory of gold. And that is some serious shit benefit. I mean, those are the kinds of benefits that allow you to teach. Okay? Really? Okay, so where am I? So at that time I wrote the following poem and presented it to Mr. Toda. Still serving an old and mystic bond, though others change, I alter not. The bond we share as fellow members of the SGI, mentor and disciples, is based on the vow we dedicate ourselves to the great adventure of it realizing Kosen Rufu in this troubled Sahe world. Through courageous and compassionate dialogue, our grassroots movement has helped one suffering individual after another embrace the Gohonzon. Thank you, I'm one of them. Today, in countries around the world, members who uphold the Gohonzon, fellow bodhisattvas of the earth, are forging ahead heroically while striving to overcome their own karmic trials. We all have them.
Yes.
That's how we prove the validity of the power of our faith. They bravely hold aloft the banner of happiness and victory for themselves and others, regardless of what's going on. Proud and aware of their mission as bodhisattvas of the earth, our members have stood up to enable all people of the latter day to savor life's true triumph by being living examples. They are the genuine disciples and noble emissaries of the Buddha. They are Buddhas. Mr. Toda declared to meet and encounter an auspicious time, like right now. To be in rhythm with that time makes having been born worthwhile. I don't want to be born a boring time. We have encountered an age when the banner pledging the fulfillment of the great vow for Kosen Rufu through the compassionate propagation of the great law continues to spread all around the globe. No one can stop our momentum. Let's continue to forge ahead with confident and buoyant steps to expand our unprecedented movement for the victory of humanity and fulfill our noble mission as bodhisattvas of the earth. Please strive together with me and together with your fellow members. And then this note, studying this writings of Nichiren Daishonin together with fellow members who strive with me in our shared struggle for Kosen Rufu on the 65th anniversary of the encountering my mentor in my hometown of Oto in Tokyo. He wrote this lecture on that anniversary. And with that, another week bites the dust. Thank you.
Thank you.